Do we as Black people deserve reparations? And if your answer is yes, then who must pay those reparations and who is eligible to receive reparations? In this video, I'm going to discuss what the Maafa is and why it is so important, including how the Maafa affects reparations. If you support reparations, you will want to watch this video. Right now, there's a lot of drama over the question of who should be eligible for reparations. There are groups that feel that Africans shouldn't receive reparations. Some who feel that Caribbeans shouldn't receive reparations. You have people who identify as foundational Black Americans and American descendants of slavery. And they will say that only the descendants of slavery should receive reparations. I have a question for you. Is the continental United States the only place that had Black people enslaved? This is why understanding the Maafa is so important. The Maafa is Swahili for great disaster. It is the name of the African Holocaust, of which slavery was one aspect. I know what you're thinking, and you're right, kind of. In terms of dealing with the United States government, then we're going to want to determine who was enslaved on their territory. Other countries may have endorsed slavery, but we need to deal with the slaves that the US government is responsible for, right? I get it, but there were other culprits who were involved and need to be held accountable, from state governments to private companies that were also involved. And there's something else we're missing. You may say Maafa, slavery, whatever. We need to focus on getting these reparations. But you need to realize that the Maafa and slavery are not the same thing. Slavery is just part of the Maafa, but there is so much more. Why does that matter? It matters because the Maafa is the basis for our reparations claims, and the Maafa continued far after slavery ended, and it happened all over the planet. We cannot make a serious claim for reparations if we aren't even going to properly catalog the crimes committed against us and identify the perpetrators of these atrocities. The description of the crimes against Black people as slavery is an intentional attempt to minimize the severity of the hundreds of years of state-sponsored terrorism against Black people. Are we going to pretend that alongside slavery, there wasn't torture and so many other acts of brutality and dehumanization? But there is so much more we have to be aware of regarding the extent and the severity of the Maafa, especially that when slavery ended, the Maafa continued. The Maafa is also the Black Codes. The Black Codes were laws designed to limit the freedom of former slaves. In other words, the war on Black people didn't end, it morphed into something new. Black people were required by law to sign work contracts and would be arrested and forced into labor if they weren't unemployed. The Black Codes imposed various types of infringements upon Black people, including limiting ownership of property, not allowing Black people to do certain trades, and banning Black people from certain businesses, as well as prohibiting Black people from owning guns. And after the Black Codes were gone, the Maafa continued with Jim Crow laws, which saw government continuing to wage war on Black people, depriving them of their rights and subjecting Black people to state-sponsored violence and terror. And the Maafa went further than that, because one of the purposes of the Maafa was to subjugate Black people and keep us powerless. Because despite all of these atrocities and obstacles, Black people managed to survive and to thrive. Black Americans were able to build prosperous communities despite the attempts to prevent our progress. In recent years, the story of Greenwood, also known as Black Wall Street, has been unearthed. But Greenwood wasn't the only Black Wall Street that existed. There were Black Wall Streets all over the country. What happened to the Black Wall Streets? The Maafa happened. All over the country, the Maafa happened. When Black people prospered, the war on Blackness responded. In Greenwood, the white residents of Tulsa attacked. They slaughtered Black people. They burned homes and businesses. They bombed Greenwood from the air. They rounded up survivors and placed them in internment camps. After they released the survivors, they made laws prohibiting the rebuilding, but the Black residents rebuilt anyway. Black Wall Street rose again, but the next time the Maafa struck, it had found a new line of attack. In order to destroy Greenwood's Black Wall Street for good this time, the Maafa used the benevolence of the federal government in the form of urban renewal. They destroyed Greenwood and built highways on top of it to make sure it stayed dead this time. So no, the Maafa didn't end with the end of slavery, and it didn't only happen in the United States. We don't talk about slavery outside of the continental US enough, but we need to. Like in Haiti, where the Maafa was notable for its brutality. Slavery existed elsewhere in the Caribbean, and the African Holocaust was also happening on the African continent. from colonization and the atrocities that accompanied it up until apartheid, a system that was remarkably similar to the Black Codes and Jim Crow laws of the United States. The Maafa has been a worldwide war waged on Black people, and it's not over. The hundreds of years of persecution of Black people, hundreds of years of the murders of Black people, hundreds of years of systemic state-sponsored terrorism against Black people, hundreds of years of atrocities against Black people, and hundreds of years of anti-Black hatred hasn't just evaporated into thin air. We need to remember the Maafa, not just for the sake of reparations, not just for the sake of remembering our history, but for the sake of ensuring our survival. We must remember the Maafa. As always, don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll see you next time.